I myself am ignorant of the fathers.
It's from Pelagius.
I'll shut up in your face.
It's from Pelagius.
I myself am ignorant of the fathers. The fact of the matter is, in fact, if I can just show you something for a moment, actually going the wrong way. Back there in that corner, that set of church fathers, which is not all that I own on the fathers, but that multi-volume set on the church fathers is one that I've owned for 25 years. It's from St. Jerome. I'm sorry, this is not available online. This is, as far as I know, still untranslated from the Latin. So I've provided you here with the Latin translation of Jerome. But he says, for being ignorant of the justice of God, that is, righteousness of God, and seeking to establish their own, the Jews, they have not submitted themselves to the justice of God, not knowing that God justifies by faith alone, sola fide, in the Latin, literally, sola fide, and thinking that they are just by the works of the law, which they did not observe, they would not submit themselves to the remission of sins, lest they should appear to have been sinners. So they wouldn't admit that they were sinners so that they might be justified by faith alone. They wouldn't submit themselves to that, and for that reason sought to be justified by their works of the law, which they did not even observe. But again, St. Jerome refers to it as being justified.
This is a text I believe that Mr. Rogers uses, and I gave the citation there from Patrologia Latinae. That's what the PL refers to, as opposed to Patrologia Graecae. Jerome, Mr. Rogers cites, for being ignorant of the justice of God and seeking to establish their own, they have not submitted themselves to the justice of God, not knowing that God justifies by, there's that phrase again, faith alone, and thinking that they are just by the works of the law, which they did not observe. They would not submit themselves to the remission of sins, lest they should appear to have been sinners. Now, again, we have this faith alone here phrase. It could mean sola fide, but there's nothing here per se. It's just a difference between people who were ignorant of justice of God. They tried to establish their own, that is to be the source of their own justice. They didn't submit to God's justice. All right. That's just plain good old anti-Pelagian talk. All right. So if you look at your sola fide checklist, I think you'll see that there's nothing here that expresses sola fide. It says, thinking that they are just by works of the law. Well, Jerome could, like Ambrosiaster, whom he knew, they were actually kind of enemies, could mean works of the law ceremonial, or he could mean works of the law apart from grace. Those are also possibilities. There's nothing in the text here that expresses sola fide. So we have a problem, though, because this text is actually not from Jerome. It floats around on the internet, and it's not from Jerome. I will tell you who it's from. It's from Pelagius. It's actually a quote from Pelagius. It's not from Jerome. So again, we have another case of Pelagius teaching justification by faith alone. All right. Now, why is this significant? Well, first, and this is a little bit of history to explain. So in the Ancient Christian Commentary on Scripture in volume 6, and I put a question mark by page 13 because this was an electronic version that I had via electronic reader, and it didn't have pagination for this section. So I guesstimated. So you have to do a little control F to find it. But he says, similar to this work and evidently dependent on it is the commentary written by arch-heretic Pelagius, which has survived because for many centuries it was thought to have been the work of Jerome. It is important because it allows Pelagius to speak for himself on subjects that were to land him in controversy with Augustine, like excommunication, and eventually lead to his condemnation. What we find is a man of moderate and even mainstream views, though it has to be remembered that the text as we now have it was reworked in the 6th century by both Primasius and Cassiodorus, Pelagius' original text was in specific ways presumably explicitly heretical. But what we have now is unexceptional, even if it is still possible to detect points of disagreement with Augustine. Now, I want to go back here. So this is a pseudo-Shamounian text, and there's a number of them. A number of Pelagius's commentaries get grouped and classified in the 6th century and further under the name of Jerome. And this causes no small amount of confusion. Why was the text reworked? Because figures thought that this was from Jerome and thought we can't let Jerome teach Pelagianism. He can't possibly be teaching that. So we're going to put in his real meaning. So then they altered the text. Okay. Cue the year 1516, which might be significant for Protestants because it's getting close to that 1517 year. This work of pseudo-Jerome was published under Jerome's name in Europe, and the reformers started to make use of it. Well, why did they make use of it? Because, as you saw, it says God justifies by faith alone. So you have Luther and Melanchthon who are using this text from Pelagius to argue that it teaches that Jerome taught justification by faith alone. Now, what do we have with Mr. Rogers? We have the same exact thing happening because Mr. Rogers apparently did not read this book or really any of the academic literature about Pelagius and the history of Latin commentaries on Paul's epistle to the Romans. Because if you read any of that literature, pseudo-Jerome comes up in a fair amount of sources. I have a number of books. Suter's book comes up in the Ambrosiaster commentary, comes up in lots of different places. So why is this important? The history is interesting, but for us it's important because, remember I said the name of the program is Shapes in the Clouds, seeing patterns that just aren't there? Well, Mr. Rogers took this text, and because he thought it was from Jerome, he read into the patristic text something that was not there according to the original intent of the author. Because whatever Pelagius believed, he did not believe the Protestant doctrine of justification by faith alone. And so, Mr. Rogers, I think this is important to take a step back and be much more careful and provide some kind of analysis for the text that you're looking at for your readers and for yourself. Because, here I'm not trying to do a one-upman thing, seriously, because everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes. You've seen some of my spelling mistakes, okay? I've made mistakes. So I'm not trying to cow you or humiliate you, but I see these texts float around from Jerome and others that are falsified on the internet, and it appears, unless you went to Patrologia Latinae yourself and got this text, which is possible. I don't know if you can read Latin or not, but that's possible. Maybe you did, but I think it's more likely it just got ripped off the internet and got floated around, and you saw it, and you read it according to your presuppositions. You interpreted the data according to your presuppositions, rather than providing an analysis of the text. Okay? So this is part of the problem. And I think all the preceding material shows very clearly that you're actually reading into the text. Things that aren't exhibited, conceptual markers for sola fide aren't exhibited in the text. Now, you may have Mr. Rogers may have other texts that he can demonstrate from the fathers that teach sola fide, but none of these have. And Jerome, quote unquote, Jerome, Pelagius certainly doesn't.